just don't know. I don't know, don't know, don't know, don't know, just don't.
So here we go. This is another episode of You Don't Know Wednesday. And on our last episode, we talked about my manager, Robert, the Latino assistant manager at Taco Bell. Again, the year was 2000. And he and I worked at the Taco Bell in Deerfield Beach, Florida, 30 miles north of Miami. And on our last episode, I talked to you about him loaning me his truck. Well, I told you, had you missed that episode, I'm going to just catch you up to speed, that while parking his vehicle in the parking lot of Bank of America, I accidentally hit the gas pedal instead of the brake and revved up onto a cement block that was wrapped around a light post and put a pretty nice dent in the fender of his truck. He had a Ford Bronco. Well, I'd say about 3 weeks went by, and I didn't have enough nerve to tell Robert what had happened. We worked together, and like I said before, I was told to park his truck in exactly the shape, form, and fashion in which he had parked it, which was reverse. He reversed his vehicle in that parking spot right outside of the drive-through window station where he worked so that he could see the very front end of his truck, and that's just how he drove. Well, he begged me to do the same, but because of shame and knowing what I had done to his truck in wrecking it, I just pulled in directly. I did not follow the instructions. Well, I think to myself, after 3 weeks or so of him not having mentioned anything, that I've escaped. We were on several shifts together after this particular incident, and he never brought it up. In fact, he would park his truck the exact same way, and I remember scratching my head like, I know he's seen that dent. Why hadn't he said anything? Well, why didn't I say anything? Really, if I'm going to be the responsible friend, then it would have been my job to say, hey, Robert, I'm sorry, man. Freak accident. I don't have a lot of money, but whatever it takes, I'll take care of the damages. Well, at 17 years old, I was still not mature enough to make amends in that manner. So, like I said, the 3 weeks went by, and one day we got into a argument due to the high tension, high volume of our store. I mean, like I've said before, that store, and I've worked at several Taco Bells since that time, in Tyler, Texas, in Shreveport, Louisiana. I worked at Taco Bells in Massachusetts. But there was nothing like the volume and just the repetitiveness of our shift as it was there in Florida. And we were getting swamped this particular day. And I kind of said something sassy to Robert. And I don't remember exactly what it was. Now, he was still the boss. And when I said what I had said, he reared up on me. And he looked at me and was like, oh, don't get fresh, Andre. Don't think I don't know that you wrecked my truck. When he said that, I was like, okay, so he did know. And immediately I felt like trash because I hadn't said anything, thought that I had gotten away with it. And because he hadn't said anything, I figured, well, if he had seen it, he just swept it under the rug. I attest that particular situation, him not sharing and attacking me over this, to his character. Now, mind you, it was his property. He was proud of this vehicle. And looking back on it, when you consider the things that we have that we are able to earn or to accumulate in our lives, there's a certain amount of pride, if you will, that comes with that. I mean, you take care of your stuff if you value it. And although he was a grown man, he could have definitely went off and cursed at me, maybe even swung at me, stabbed me, He was very calm. And I think it had a lot to do with his character. I think it had a lot to do with the fact that Robert simply liked me. And him looking at my life from the standpoint of an older man, perhaps he remembered when he was young. And maybe he made the same mistakes. Maybe he did certain things that would create certain repercussions and remembered how he felt. I don't know what was going on in his mind, why he never said to me, hey, Dre, I know what you did initially. I mean, because I'm quite sure he inspected that truck the very day I brought it back. And he never said anything. In fact, when he came back to work, he didn't look at me with a queer eye like, I know what you did. He never spoke to me in a coarse manner. He wasn't rude. He didn't raise his voice. There was no hint of anger or frustration in him. And you know what's the crazy thing about it? Robert didn't profess to be a Christian. It's crazy when I think back about it that we who are professed Christians, don't let somebody hurt us, take advantage of us, misuse our items or abuse our property. Oh, they're going to hear about it. And they're going to hear about it right away. It won't be any delays in us expressing what it was that we felt upon us realizing that they had done something of that manner. You know, I look at Christendom today. I look at the relationship that we ought to have with Christ. It is so much more than seeking a heavenly kingdom off in the distance. Because long before that date ever comes, we are living on earth learning to get along with one another and to forgive one another's trespasses. However, still, our flesh, our emotions, our feelings are still very much alive. And that's why Christ hasn't come back yet. Because he knows his people aren't ready. Now, we look ready, we sound ready, we're in church on the right days, we eat the right meals, we do a whole lot of stewardship, we give our tithes and our offering. But at the end of the day, the character is what Christ wants to change. And might I add that that is the hardest part of being a Christian. It's easy to pray. It's easy to read the scriptures. It's easy to smile when someone's smiling at you. It's easy to be friendly when others are friendly with you. But when we're offended, when somebody cuts against the grain of our spirit, when things don't go the way we want it to, when we've been waiting for years for our plans to come into fruition, when we don't see things going the way we want it to, how are we going to act then? And that is the test of whether or not our relationship with Christ has availed us anything. Now, you may say it's the Sabbath, Exodus chapter 20, verse 8 through 11. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Someone else may say it's prophecy, and I've got to know what the prophecies are telling me in full detail. Someone else may say it's my diet. Someone else may say, etc., etc. But Christ is returning for those who have emulated his character. Straight up. Nothing more and nothing less. You can know that Bible front to back. But what is your character like? And Robert showed me that day when he exposed me 3 weeks or so later that even though he didn't profess to be a Christian, that his character was one of a man who understood that you don't avail anything acting out, cursing, fighting, putting up the dukes, running to your truck and getting your pistol, grabbing a machete, breaking open a bottle and chopping somebody up. You don't avail anything out of that. You don't prosper in that. You prosper in keeping your cool. And I'm still learning that to this day. We will all be learning that as we march closer to heaven. Well, I got to apologizing. And I begged Robert for forgiveness. And, he looked at me. And immediately he calmed down because he was a little hot at that point when he said what he had said. But when I apologized, that gruff, angry countenance just dissipated. And it's almost like he had tears in his eyes. If I can remember, I remember Robert's face completely to this day. If you are wanting to get a idea of what Robert looked like in the face, I want you to see if you remember the rapper. He died in 2000 of a heart attack, Big Pun. And if you don't know that face and you're not familiar with that name, man, we live in an information age. Go and Google his image. And that's exactly what Robert looked like. Just a little slimmer in the face, but just as wide. as Big Pun was. And he looked at me with almost tears in his eyes, and he said, Andre, it's all good, man. It's all good. Would you believe that Robert still let me borrow his truck after that? You talk about a brother that is exhibiting the character of Christ. Man, that's a life lesson for many of us Christians who are pompous and high-minded and think that, you know what, now that I had left my wallet on the table and you stole some money from me, it's my job to put the wallet up, lock it behind a door and key, and never trust you again, because that's how many of us Christians carry our lives. But Jesus told the disciples something very special one day when they thought that they were going to do one up on Christ. Well, how often should I forgive my brother? 3 times? They thought they had, cornered Christ, like, the average amount of times that, the Jewish individuals or the Jewish culture would forgive somebody was about once. A few times here or there. So they thought they were being cute. Should we forgive them 3 times, Lord? And Jesus looked at them with a solemn face. He said, 70 times 7 times. If your brother comes to you and in 70 times in a day commits a wrong towards you, it is your responsibility to forgive him 70 times. Now that ain't easy. I'm not going to sit here and act like I've come that far in my religious experience, because the truth be told, I haven't. But when I stop and I think about the mark that I'm aiming for, I'm not in competition with my pastor. I'm not in competition with you. I'm not in competition with any politician or any other person for that matter. My job is to emulate Christ. Nothing else will do. No one else will do. Well, after this situation, Robert and I continued to be friends. I was truly grateful to Robert for the way that he treated me. And would you believe he even still continued to allow me to use his car? Decent fellow. What a friend. We continued on as friends. We continued on working together until eventually I would leave Florida.